The cold darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Among the distant stars, something moved. Not one ship, but hundreds. They traveled together like a pack of hungry wolves, their red hulls gleaming under the light of a nearby sun. Admiral Kethver stood tall on the bridge of his flagship. His scaly green skin reflected the glow from the control panels around him. His yellow eyes stared out through the huge windows at the blue and green planet below. This was his 200th conquest. Another world was about to fall to the mighty Zephyrian Empire. The planet the humans called Earth looked peaceful from space. White clouds drifted over blue oceans. Green and brown land masses showed where millions of creatures lived their simple lives. Kethver had seen many worlds like this one. They all looked beautiful before his ships turned them into ash. "Report," Kethver commanded in his deep voice. Commander Zelktar stepped forward. His uniform was covered with medals from past victories. "The planet has basic defenses, my lord. A few orbital stations, some primitive missiles. Nothing that can threaten our fleet?" Kethver nodded. It was always the same. Young races always thought they could fight the Empire. They never understood how small they were compared to the might of Zephyr. This human species would learn just like all the others. "Send the surrender demand," Kethver ordered. Far away from the alien fleet, a small human ship drifted through space. The EU's Defiant was not much to look at. It was barely 300 meters long, with a crew of only 43 people. Compared to the massive Zephyrian warships, it looked like a minnow swimming next to whales. Commander Jake Morrison sat in the captain's chair, studying the data on his screen. He was a man in his early 40s, with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for most of his adult life, but he had never seen anything like what was happening now. "Sir, we're getting something on the long-range sensors called out Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station." She was young, maybe 25, with black hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her hands moved quickly over her controls as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. "What is it?" Morrison asked. 137 ships, sir.
Oh, maybe more.
They just appeared out of nowhere about an hour ago. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. The Defiant had been on a routine patrol mission at the edge of the solar system. They were supposed to check on the mining stations and then return to Earth. Instead, they had stumbled into humanity's first contact with an alien species. "Are they heading for Earth?" Morrison asked. Captain Lisa Brooks looked up from her tactical station. She was a few years older than Rodriguez, with blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. "Yes, sir. They're moving at steady speed toward the inner system. At their current rate, they'll reach Earth in about 6 hours." Morrison stood up and walked to the main view screen. The alien ships were too far away to see clearly, but the computer was showing him what they looked like. They were huge, at least 10 times bigger than any human ship. Their hulls were dark red, almost the color of dried blood. "Have they seen us?" Morrison asked. "I don't think so, sir," Rodriguez replied. "We're running silent, and we're pretty small compared to them." Morrison thought about their options. The smart thing to do would be to run back to Earth as fast as possible. Warn the defense forces. Let someone else deal with this problem. But Morrison had read the reports from Deep Space Scouts. They had found the remains of other worlds, planets that had been burned from orbit, entire civilizations wiped out. "Sir, I'm picking up a transmission," Rodriguez said suddenly. "It's coming from the alien fleet. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Can you translate it?" Rodriguez worked at her console for several minutes. The computer systems on the Defiant were some of the most advanced that humanity had built, but this was still a challenge. Finally, words began to appear on the screen. "They're demanding surrender," Rodriguez said quietly. "They want Earth too. Submit to something called the Zephyrian Empire. They're giving us 1 hour to respond." Morrison felt anger building in his chest. These aliens had traveled across the galaxy to threaten his home. They expected humanity to just roll over and accept slavery. They had clearly never met a human before. "Sir, what are your orders?" Brooks asked. Morrison looked around at his crew. They were all young, all brave, all ready to follow him wherever he led them. He thought about his wife Sarah back on Earth. He thought about his 2 children playing in their backyard under the blue sky. He thought about the billions of people who had no idea that their world was about to be attacked. Open a channel to the alien fleet, Morrison said. Double quotes, sir. Rodriguez looked surprised. Are you sure that's wise? Do it. The main screen flickered, and then showed the face of something that was definitely not human. The creature had green scaly skin and yellow eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth, and when it spoke, Morrison could see a forked tongue. I am Admiral Kethfer of the Zephyrian Empire, the alien said. Its voice was translated by the computer, but Morrison could hear the arrogance in every word. Your pathetic little world will surrender to our authority. You have 1 hour to power down your defenses and prepare for occupation. Morrison stepped forward so that his face filled the screen on his end. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earth Systems. You are in violation of human space. I'm ordering you to withdraw immediately. The alien admiral stared at him for a moment, then began to laugh. It was a horrible sound, like glass breaking, mixed with a snake's hiss. You order me. One tiny ship against my entire fleet. Human, you amuse me. I'm not trying to be funny, Morrison replied calmly. Giving you a chance to leave peacefully. Take it, Kethfers. Laughter stopped. His yellow eyes narrowed to thin slits. You dare threaten the Empire? Very well, human. You have 10 minutes to surrender your ship. After that, I will destroy you slowly so that your death serves as an example to your entire species. The transmission cut off, leaving Morrison staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew waited for orders. The alien fleet was still hours away from Earth, but it was close enough to destroy the Defiant whenever it wanted to. Well, Morrison said finally, I guess we're about to find out what humans are really made of. He turned to face his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes, but they were also determined. They knew that they were probably going to die, but they were ready to fight anyway. That was what made humans special, Morrison thought. When faced with impossible odds, they didn't run. They stood their ground and fought, all-hands battle. Stations, Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. We're going to buy Earth some time. The crew of the Defiant moved quickly to their positions. They checked their weapons, powered up their shields, and prepared for a battle that they had almost no chance of winning. But they were human, and humans don't give up without a fight. Far from the battle that was about to begin, Dr. Helen Carter sat in her secret laboratory deep inside an asteroid. The rock had been hollowed out years ago to hide humanity's most dangerous project. Only a few dozen people in the entire solar system knew what she was working on. Helen was 52 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent the last 15 years of her life working on something that most people would call impossible. Her hands shook slightly as she checked the readings on her computer screen. The numbers were all wrong. Everything was happening too fast. Dr. Carter, we're getting an emergency signal from Earth Command, called out Dr. Ryan Adams from across the lab. He was her second in command, a brilliant physicist who had given up a comfortable teaching job to work on this crazy project. Helen looked up from her work. What kind of signal? Priority Alpha, Ryan said, his face pale. The highest level. They want us to prepare the weapon for immediate deployment. Helen felt her heart skip a beat. Priority Alpha meant that Earth was under direct threat. It meant that humanity was about to face extinction. It meant that her untested, dangerous, probably insane weapon was suddenly the only hope for their entire species. How long do we have? She asked. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murphy stepped out from behind a bank of computers. He was the military liaison for the project, a tough man with scars on his hands from years of handling dangerous equipment. 6 hours, maybe less. There's an alien fleet heading for Earth. A big one. Helen closed her eyes and tried to think. The weapon they had built was called the Quantum Displacement Drive. It was based on technology they had found in a crashed alien ship 30 years ago. The ship had been small, maybe a scout vessel, and it had been badly damaged when they found it, but buried in its computers were the plans for something incredible. Most weapons destroyed things by blowing them up, or burning them, or smashing them into pieces. The QDD was different. It didn't destroy matter. It removed it from reality completely. It made things stop existing. They had tested it only once, on a small asteroid about the size of a house. The asteroid had simply vanished, not exploded. Not broken apart, just gone. The space where it had been was empty, but it was a strange kind of empty. It hurt to look at directly, like trying to stare at something that wasn't there. "Have you told them that we've never tested it on anything bigger than a rock?" Helen asked. Steve nodded grimly. "They know. They also know that if we don't try, humanity doesn't get a second chance." Helen looked around her laboratory. 20 years of work were scattered across tables and hanging from the ceiling. Complex machines hummed quietly in the corners. In the center of it all sat the QDD itself, a crystal device about the size of a refrigerator that seemed to bend light around it. Dr. Carter called out Dr. Jenny Walsh from her station near the back wall. She was the youngest member of the team, barely 30, but she understood the quantum mathematics better than anyone else. "I'm seeing some strange readings from the test site." Helen walked over to look at Jenny's screen. The area where they had tested the weapon 3 months ago was still showing unusual energy patterns. Space itself seemed damaged there, as if reality had a scar that wouldn't heal. "What does it mean?" Helen asked. "I'm not sure," Jenny admitted. "But I think the effect might be permanent. We didn't just remove that asteroid from existence. We removed the possibility of existence from that entire area of space." Helen felt a chill run down her spine. If Jenny was right, then the QDD was even more dangerous than they had thought. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a tool that could permanently damage the fabric of reality itself. "Dr. Carter, we need to make a decision," Steve said. "The transport ship is ready. We can have the QDD mounted and deployed within 4 hours. Once we fire it, we have no idea what will happen." Helen thought about the alien fleet heading toward Earth. She thought about the billions of people who had no idea that their world was about to be attacked. She thought about her own daughter, who lived in New York and worked as a teacher. She thought about all the children in her daughter's classes, all the future that might be destroyed if the aliens won. "There's something else," Ryan said quietly. "The delivery system. The only ship fast enough to get the QDD into position is the prototype stealth vessel. It's barely tested, and it only has room for a crew of 2. "Who's volunteering?" Helen asked. "Captain Robert Hayes," Steve replied. "He's a test pilot, one of the best we have." "But Helen, this is a one-way trip. The ship doesn't have enough fuel to make it back after firing the weapon." Helen nodded slowly. She had known that this day might come. When she started working on the QDD, she had hoped it would never be needed. But hope wasn't enough when faced with an alien invasion. "What about the targeting system?" she asked. "We designed the QDD to work on small targets. Can it handle an entire fleet?" Jenny looked up from her calculations. "Theoretically, yes. But we'll need to modify the quantum field generators. Instead of targeting the ships directly, we'll need to target the space around them." "That's never been tested," Ryan pointed out. "Nothing we're doing has been tested," Helen replied. "We're flying blind here." She walked over to the QDD and placed her hand on its crystal surface. The device was warm to the touch, and she could feel a slight vibration running through it. Inside that crystal was the power to erase matter from existence. It was humanity's ultimate weapon, and it might also be their ultimate mistake. "Dr. Carter," Steve said gently, "we need an answer. Do we deploy the weapon?" Helen looked around at her team. These people had worked with her for years, believing in a project that most scientists would call impossible. They had built something that could change the course of human history. Now they had to decide whether to use it. "Yes," Helen said finally. "Prepare the QDD for deployment, and may God help us all." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The QDD was carefully loaded onto the prototype stealth ship. Captain Hayes ran through his mission briefings while the technical team made final adjustments to the weapon systems. Helen worked frantically to modify the targeting computers, trying to adapt a system designed for small targets to handle an entire alien fleet. As the stealth ship prepared to launch, Helen realized that she might never see her life's work again. The QDD would either save humanity or destroy it. There was no middle ground. "Dr. Carter," Captain Hayes said over the communication system, "we're ready for launch." Helen took a deep breath. "Good luck, Captain. Bring our people home. Stealth. Ship vanished into the darkness of space, carrying with it humanity's most dangerous secret. Helen watched it go, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of their entire species. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the alien fleet grow larger on his screen. The Zephyrian ships were massive, their red hulls gleaming like fresh blood in the starlight. A small vessel looked like a toy. Next to them. Time until they reach weapons range, Morrison asked. Captain Lisa Brooks checked her tactical display. 12 minutes, sir. Maybe less if they decide to speed up. Morrison nodded. He had been thinking about this moment for the past hour. His ship carried 6 nuclear missiles, the most powerful weapons that humanity had ever built. Against the enemy, they would be devastating. Against these alien monsters, they would barely scratch the paint. Sir, I have an idea, called out Lieutenant Pete Jackson from the weapons station. He was a young man with red hair and freckles, barely old enough to shave. But he had graduated at the top of his class from the Weapons Academy. Let's hear it, Morrison said. We can't hurt their big ships, Pete explained. But look at their formation. They have smaller vessels mixed in with the giants. Supply ships, communication relays, maybe scout vessels. If we target those instead of the warships, we might be able to disrupt their coordination. Morrison studied the tactical display. Pete was right. The alien fleet wasn't just warships. There were dozens of smaller vessels moving between the larger ones like busy insects. They were probably carrying supplies, messages, and repair equipment. That's good thinking, Morrison said. But there's a problem. As soon as we fire, they'll know exactly where we are. We'll be dead in seconds. And not if we keep moving, said Chief Engineer Maria Santos from her station. She was a tough woman in her 40s who had been working on starships since she was 16. I can push the engines past their safety limits. Give us maybe 20 minutes of high-speed maneuvering. Before they burn out? Morrison looked around at his crew. They were all young, all brave, all ready to die for their planet. But he didn't want them to die for nothing. He wanted their sacrifice to matter. Rodriguez sent a message to Earth Command, Morrison ordered. Tell them we're going to try to buy them some time. Tell them to make it count. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez's fingers flew over her keyboard. Message sent, sir. Morrison took a deep breath. All right, people. We're going to play a game of tag with the biggest fleet in the galaxy. Jackson, target the small ships only. Santos, give me everything the engines have. Brooks, plot us an escape route through the asteroid field. Sir, the asteroid field is dangerous, Brooks warned. One wrong move and we'll be smashed to pieces. Better than being smashed by alien weapons, Morrison replied. Do it! The Defiant suddenly burst into motion. Its engines roared to life, pushing the small ship forward at speeds that made the hull groan with stress. Morrison felt himself pressed back into his chair as they accelerated toward the alien fleet. First target locked, Jackson announced. It's some kind of supply ship. About half the size of our vessel. Fire, Morrison ordered. The nuclear missile streaked across space, its fusion warhead bright as a small sun. It struck the alien supply ship dead center, and the vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. Direct hit, Jackson called out. Target destroyed. Admiral Kethfer felt his flagship shake as the explosion reached them. He turned to his tactical officer, his yellow eyes blazing with fury. What was that? The human ship, my lord. They destroyed the supply vessel. Kethmer couldn't believe what he was hearing. The tiny human vessel had actually attacked his fleet. It was like a mouse trying to fight a tiger. It was insane. Destroy them, he ordered. All ships, target the human vessel and fire. But the Defiant was already moving. Morrison had ordered Santos to push the engines to 120% of their rated capacity, and the small ship was dancing between the larger alien vessels like a hummingbird among elephants. Second target locked, Jackson announced. Communication relay, bearing 27 Mark 5. Another missile launched. Another explosion lit up space. This time, the alien communication ship was carrying important equipment. When it exploded, it took out the command network for an entire section of the fleet. They're trying to target us, Brooks called out. But we're too small and too fast. Their big guns can't track us. Morrison smiled grimly. That's the plan. Keep us moving, Santos. Jackson, find me another target. The Defiant wove through the alien fleet like a needle through cloth. Morrison's crew worked together perfectly, each person knowing exactly what the others needed. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but they were fighting smart. Third target destroyed, Jackson reported, some kind of repair ship. Fourth target locked, he called out a minute later. It looks like a fuel tanker. The nuclear missile struck the alien fuel ship and created an explosion that lit up half the fleet. The blast was so bright that Morrison's crew had to shield their eyes. When the light faded, 3 more alien ships had been damaged by flying debris. Admiral Kethfer was beside himself with rage. His massive fleet was being embarrassed by a single human vessel. Ships that had conquered a dozen worlds were running into each other trying to catch one small enemy. Deploy the fighter squadrons, he ordered. I want that human ship captured. Not destroyed. I want to interrogate their crew before I execute them. Dozens of small alien fighters launched from the larger ships. They were fast and maneuverable, designed to catch exactly the kind of target that the Defiant represented. Sir, we have company, Brooks announced. 60 fighters, moving to intercept. Morrison watched the tactical display as the alien fighters closed in. His ship was fast, but it wasn't fast enough to outrun dedicated pursuit craft. The game was about to change. How much time do we have before Earth's secret weapon arrives? Morrison asked. Rodriguez checked her communications. 15 minutes, sir. Then we need to stay alive for 15 minutes, Morrison said. How are the engines holding up? They're running hot, sir? We're at 130% capacity now. Any higher, and we'll blow the reactor. Morrison made a decision that would save his ship and his crew. Plot a course for the asteroid field. We're going to play hide and seek. The Defiant dove toward the nearby asteroid belt. The alien fighters closed behind. Morrison knew that the asteroids would provide cover, but they would also be dangerous. One collision would destroy his ship just as surely as an alien weapon. Sir, this is crazy, Brooks said. We're going too fast to navigate safely. Then we better be lucky, Morrison replied. Because right now luck is all we have. The small human ship disappeared into the asteroid field, followed by 60 alien fighters. Behind them, the main fleet struggled to reorganize after the hit-and-run attack. Admiral Kethfer stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In 30 years of conquest, no enemy had ever made his fleet look foolish. These humans were different. They were unpredictable, creative, and completely insane. He was beginning to understand why they might be dangerous, but he had no idea how dangerous they really were. The real surprise was still 15 minutes away. Captain Robert Hayes sat alone in the tiny cockpit of the UES Phantom. The stealth ship was barely bigger than a fighter, built more like a delivery vehicle than a proper warship. Behind him, the quantum displacement drive hummed with barely contained energy that made his teeth ache. Dr. Carter, are you reading me? Hayes spoke into his headset. Loud and clear, Captain, came the reply from the hidden research station. How are the QDD readings? Hayes checked the instruments that he barely understood. The numbers meant nothing to him, but they were all in the green. Everything looks normal, Doc. As normal as a reality-bending weapon can look anyway. Dr. Helen? Carter's voice crackled through the static. Remember, Robert, you need to get within 5,000 kilometers of the alien fleet. Any farther, and the quantum field won't be strong enough to affect their ships. And any closer and I'll be caught in the field myself, Hayes replied. He'd volunteered for this mission, knowing it was suicide. His wife had died 3 years ago in a mining accident. His children were grown and living their own lives. He had nothing left to lose except his life, and today seemed like a good day to spend it. Captain Hayes, Dr. Carter said quietly, I want you to know that what you're doing today will save billions of lives. Just make sure it works, Doc, Hayes replied. Hate to die for nothing. He cut the communication and focused on flying. The Phantom was approaching the alien fleet from the direction of the sun, using the star's radiation to hide his approach. The ship's stealth systems were working perfectly. As far as the aliens knew, he was just another piece of space debris. Meanwhile, in the asteroid field, Commander Morrison and his crew were fighting for their lives. The alien fighters had followed them into the rocks, and now both sides were playing a deadly game of three-dimensional tag among the spinning stones. "Missile incoming," called out Captain Lisa Brooks. "Brace for impact." The Defiant rolled hard to the left, and an alien energy blast scorched past them, striking a nearby asteroid and turning it into a cloud of glowing dust. The explosion lit up the space around them like a firework. "We can't keep this up much longer," Chief Engineer Maria Santos reported. "Engines are at 140% capacity. Any higher, and we'll have a reactor breach." Morrison watched the tactical display as alien fighters swarmed around them. His ship had destroyed 4 of the enemy craft, but there were still 56 left, and more were coming from the main fleet. "How much longer until our ace in the hole arrives?" Morrison asked. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez checked her communications. 5 minutes, sir." Morrison nodded grimly. 5 minutes might as well be 5 hours. The Defiant was running out of options. The asteroid field had provided cover, but it was also slowing them down. The alien fighters were getting closer with each passing second. "Sir, I have an idea," called out Lieutenant Pete Jackson from his weapons station. "We still have 2 nuclear missiles left. What if we use them on the asteroids instead of the enemy ships?" Morrison turned to look at him. "Explain." "If we detonate a nuke inside a large asteroid, it will shatter into thousands of fragments, all moving at high speed. It would be like a giant shotgun blast." Morrison understood immediately. Debris. Field that the alien fighters can't avoid. "Exactly, sir." Morrison looked at the tactical display. It was a large asteroid about 2 kilometers away, easily 10 times bigger than his ship. If they could crack it open with a nuclear weapon, the explosion would create a cloud of high-speed rocks that would be impossible for the fighters to dodge. "Do it," Morrison ordered. The nuclear missile launched from the Defiant and struck the massive asteroid dead center. The explosion was incredible, turning the solid rock into an expanding cloud of deadly fragments. The alien fighters that had been chasing them suddenly found themselves flying through a blizzard of stone and metal. 6 fighters were destroyed immediately. 8 more were damaged and forced to retreat. The rest scattered, trying to find safe paths through the debris cloud. "That bought us some time," Morrison said, "but not much." Captain Hayes watched the battle from his position near the alien fleet. The Phantom sensors were picking up the explosions from the asteroid field, but he couldn't afford to be distracted. He was less than 10,000 kilometers from the enemy ships now, close enough to see their individual hull markings. "Dr. Carter, I'm beginning my attack run," Hayes reported. "Understood, Captain." "Remember, target the space around the ships, not the ships themselves. The quantum field needs room to expand." Hayes adjusted his flight path, bringing the Phantom in from below the alien fleet. The massive red warships loomed above him like floating cities. He had never seen anything so large that was built by intelligent beings. The QDD behind him was humming louder now, its crystal core glowing with an inner light that hurt to look at. Hayes could feel the weapon charging up, drawing power from the ship's reactor. Reality itself seemed to be bending around the device. 5,000 kilometers and closing, Hayes announced. Admiral Cuthfer stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with growing frustration. The human ship in the asteroid field was still alive, still causing problems for his fighters. It was impossible. No single vessel should be able to survive against such overwhelming odds. "Lord," called out his tactical officer, "we're detecting an energy buildup from the asteroid field. The humans may be preparing to use a larger weapon." Cuthfer nodded. "Prepare the gravity cannon. One shot will end this annoyance." The massive weapon on the front of the Dominator began to glow with purple energy. It was designed to crush planets, and it would certainly be enough to destroy one small human ship. 4,000 kilometers, Hayes announced. "Robert, you need to fire now," Dr. Carter's voice crackled through the static. "The quantum field takes 30 seconds to reach full power." Hayes looked at the controls that would activate humanity's most dangerous weapon. Once he pressed that button, there would be no going back. The QDD would fire, and everything within its area of effect would simply stop existing. "Kilometers," he said. "Captain, fire the weapon," Dr. Carter ordered. Hayes pressed the button. The quantum displacement drive activated with a sound like reality tearing. Behind Hayes, the crystal core exploded with light that seemed to come from somewhere beyond normal space. The quantum field began to expand. Moving outward at the speed of light, Hayes had just enough time to send one final message before the field reached his own ship. "Tell Earth it worked," he said. "The aliens are gone, and humanity is safe." Quantum field swept over the Phantom first, and Captain Robert Hayes simply ceased to exist. Not killed, not destroyed, but erased from reality as if he had never been born. Then the field reached the alien fleet. Admiral Disselver watched in horror as his ships began to vanish. Not explode, not break apart, but disappear completely. Space where they had been was empty, but it was wrong somehow. It hurt to look at ship after ship winked out of existence as the quantum field expanded. Hundreds of vessels that had conquered dozens of worlds were simply gone. The mighty Zephyrian fleet, the terror of the galaxy, was being erased from reality by a weapon they couldn't understand. Kethver had just enough time to realize that his empire had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not primitive. They were something far more dangerous. Then the field reached the Dominator. Admiral Kethver joined his fleet in non-existence in the asteroid field. The crew of the Defiant watched in stunned silence as the alien fleet simply disappeared. Where there had been hundreds of massive warships, now there was only empty space that seemed to shimmer with impossible light. "My God," whispered Morrison.
"Ow."
They actually did it. 3 months after the battle, Commander Jake Morrison stood in the Memorial Garden on Earth. The garden was new, built to honor the heroes who had died saving humanity. In the center stood a statue of Captain Robert Hayes, the man who had given his life to fire the weapon that erased an entire alien fleet from existence. Morrison was no longer just a commander. Earth's government had promoted him to admiral and given him command of humanity's new deep space defense force. But the promotion felt hollow. Too many good people had died for him to feel proud about his new rank. "Sir, the memorial service is about to begin," said Captain Lisa Brooks. She had also been promoted and now served as Morrison's second-in-command. The crew of the Defiant had become heroes, but they all knew the real hero was buried in a grave that would always be empty. Morrison nodded and walked toward the gathering crowd. Hundreds of people had come to remember the sacrifice that saved their world. Dr. Helen Carter was there, looking older than her years. The stress of building humanity's most dangerous weapon had aged her badly. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez stood near the front of the crowd, wearing her new uniform with the ribbons that marked her as a veteran of the First Alien War. Beside her stood Chief Engineer Maria Santos and Lieutenant Pete Jackson. They were the survivors, the ones who had lived to tell the story, but they were not the only ones affected by the battle. News of the alien fleet's disappearance had spread throughout the galaxy faster than light itself. Every spacefaring species had heard the story of the humans who could make entire fleets vanish with a single weapon. On the distant world of Zephyr Prime, General Vactor paced back and forth in the war room. He was now the highest-ranking military officer in what remained of the Zephyrian Empire. The loss of Admiral Kethver and his fleet had been a disaster that shook their civilization to its core. "Report," Vactor demanded from his intelligence officer. "The human homeworld remains heavily defended, my lord. Our spies report that they have built more of the weapons that destroyed our fleet. They call them quantum displacement drives." Vactor felt a chill run down his spine. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years by overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and firepower. But how do you fight an enemy that can erase you from existence? "What about the other client? Species?" Vactor asked. "Are they still loyal to the Empire?" The intelligence officer looked uncomfortable. "Many are asking questions, my lord. They want to know if we can protect them from the humans. Some are considering surrender." Vactor slammed his fist on the table. The mighty Zephyrian Empire was falling apart because of one small blue world and its impossible weapons. It was humiliating. Back on Earth, the memorial service was ending. Morrison watched as families placed flowers at the base of Captain Hayes' statue. The man had no family of his own to mourn him, so the entire human race had adopted him as their hero. Admiral Morrison called out Dr. Carter as she approached. "Do you have a moment?" Morrison nodded. "Of course, Doctor. How are you holding?" "Up." Dr. Carter looked tired. "I've been working on the QDD technology, trying to understand what we actually created. The results are disturbing." They walked away from the crowd to a quiet corner of the garden. Dr. Carter pulled out a small device that showed holographic displays of scientific data. "The quantum field that destroyed the alien fleet is still there," she explained. "Invisible to normal sensors, but it's permanently damaged the fabric of space in that region." Morrison frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means we didn't just create a weapon," Dr. Carter said. "We created a scar in reality itself. That area of space will never be the same. Nothing can exist there anymore." Morrison felt a chill. "Are you saying we broke the universe?" "Part of it, yes. And Admiral, there's something else. QDD technology is spreading. Other human colonies want their own quantum weapons for protection. If we're not careful, we could end up with dozens of these reality-breaking devices scattered across human space." Morrison understood the problem immediately. The weapon that had saved humanity could also destroy it. In the wrong hands, a QDD could erase entire planets from existence. "What do you recommend?" Morrison asked. "Strict control. It's only Earth should have access to the technology. And we should never use it again unless humanity faces complete extinction." Morrison nodded. "I'll talk to the Council." "But Doctor, what about other species? What if they develop similar weapons?" Dr. Carter shook her head. "The QDD is based on technology from that crashed alien ship we found 30 years ago. As far as we know, no other species has access to that knowledge. Across the galaxy, word of humanity's victory continued to spread. On the trade world of Nexus Station, alien merchants whispered about the ghost humans who could make fleets disappear. On the warrior planet of Kethdar, military leaders studied the battle reports and shook their heads in disbelief. The Galactic Council, ALUS, the alliance of the oldest spacefaring species, called an emergency session to discuss the human threat. Representatives from a dozen different civilizations gathered to debate what should be done about this new power that had emerged from a primitive system. "The humans must be contained," declared Ambassador Zithak of the Hegemony. "Their weapon threatens the stability of the entire galaxy." "But how do you contain a species that can erase matter from existence?" asked Counselor Melter of the Federation. "Any fleet we send against them might simply vanish." The debate went on for hours, but no one could agree on a solution. Some wanted to destroy humanity before they became too powerful. Others wanted to make peace and trade agreements. A few suggested simply avoiding human space entirely. In the end, they decided to do nothing. The risk was too great. Humanity had proven that they were not to be trifled with. On Earth, Admiral Morrison stood in his new office, looking out at the stars through a reinforced window. His desk was covered with reports from deep space scouts and intelligence agents. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of it all. Lieutenant Rodriguez knocked on his door and entered with a stack of papers. "Sir, we're getting surrender requests from 3 Zephyrian colonies. They want to join the Earth Alliance." Morrison smiled grimly. The empire that had tried to conquer humanity was falling apart. Former enemy worlds were asking for protection from the very species they had planned to enslave. "What's our response?" Rodriguez asked. Morrison thought carefully. Humanity had gained incredible power, but power came with responsibility. They could become the new galactic empire, ruling through fear of their reality-erasing weapons. Or they could choose a different path. "Send a message to all 3 colonies," Morrison said. "Tell them that humanity offers friendship, not conquest. We'll protect them if they need it, but we won't rule them." Rodriguez smiled. "Yes, sir." As she left, Morrison returned to watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the quantum scar left. By their weapon continued to exist, a permanent reminder of the price of survival. Captain Hayes and Dr. Carter had given humanity the power to reshape the galaxy. Now it was up to the living to decide how. To use that power, the Empire truly hadn't been ready for what humanity could do when pushed to the edge of extinction. Perhaps more importantly, Humanity hadn't been ready for the consequences of their own desperate victory. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would they.